And I think Mr. Philadelphia Eagle is now with us. And so is Watson Brown. So, hello, Randall Cunningham. Happy New Year.
I got my throwback on. I got it for Christmas. There you go, man.
Okay, that thing would have been what, 70s and 80s Vermeil?
That's was 88, 87, 88. Buddy Ryan. Crazy Buddy.
Yes. And to quote Buddy, there's a winner in town and you're looking at him.
Buddy Ryan had a running back his first couple of years when he got there named Ernest Jackson. And he said about Ernest, they said, Buddy, you just traded a guy that gained over 1,000 yards. And Buddy Ryan said, yeah. He said, you could have gained 1,000 yards if I'd have given you the ball 1,000 times.
Buddy was always such a heart warmer.
Yeah, just a really lovely guy.
So, okay, now we've got on paper and on film a Joe Milton that looked better than we had ever seen him. So what does this do as far as how next season begins, and how do they classify him? Is he the starter, no questions asked going in? What do you think the designation is?
Well, their quarterbacks coach, as a prelude to the Orange Bowl, said, we are going to have an open competition in the spring. So that sounds to me like, if that's to be believed, that they're going to have an open competition in the spring. Now, Tennessee's not going to start a true freshman at quarterback because that's just not done in this league unless you absolutely have to do that. What that did, George, that game and that performance from him, is it provided some clarity to that situation and gives them at least something in the transfer portal, because they're trying to attract a difference maker at wide receiver, not a player, a difference maker. And they have their eyes on this young man who comes from Oregon, who's going to be in here on Friday for a visit. Miami's involved with him. Arkansas is involved with him. Some other folks are involved with him. Dante Thornton is his name, from Oregon. He's originally from Baltimore, but he's a spindly guy, one of those tall, rangy wide receivers that fits perfectly in this offense. Tennessee had their eyes on some other guys in the early portal activity, pre-bowl game. Those guys went elsewhere. Unless more enter the portal, right now, of the highly ranked guys, there's kind of slim pickings there for them. So it was good to get something credible on film to sell for potential recruits, really of all positions, because let's face it, in the modern game, if you don't have a quarterback, you almost don't have a chance. And so for them to have something credible to put on film, and then to beat Dabo Swinney, you cannot spell culture without C-U-L-T. To beat them in that game was all that much more sweeter for Tennessee, because Tennessee, if they're going to get back to being Tennessee, has to be able to recruit in the Carolinas, Virginia, the Northeastern corridor a little bit in those parts on the seaboard with some credibility. And that's what that game was about for them.
Tony, I'm going to ask you one more thing, and then I'll turn it over to Watson. What do you think the coaching staff did best with Milton in the 3.5 weeks after the Vanderbilt game, where frankly he didn't play all that well, to last Friday night where he was terrific?
I think they put him in a position to be successful. And I think to me, that's the epitome of any kind of coach, you know. Can you take what you have, adjust to that situation, and be successful? And I think they came up with something and allowed him to be successful. And, you know, it's not like me to come on here and brag on Watson Brown, but I had him on Friday. And, George, it's almost like Watson was reading the script of what was going to go down Friday night. I don't know where Watson gets that, but he's got a sixth sense about him. He's got a prescience about him that's otherworldly. This is a man in touch with the stars or something.
Well, I sure can't jump to the stars. I can tell you
Well,
that. The
No, but
vertical left me about
I,
50 years ago.
but you're older than some of the stars.
Thank you, George.
You're welcome. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year back to you. Tony, the thing that we'll get into the game a little bit, but two things came out, I think, that really needed to come out. Number one, Joe, I said if he plays C+ or better, they're going to win the game. He played B to me. I think he was a B player. He can play better. He can still react a little quicker in the pocket on certain things, either take off and scramble or throw quicker. He got caught 2 or 3 times, I thought, where he got a little confused and had to go down, but at least he took care of the ball. But he made the throws that he had to make. So I don't think now they got to go to the transfer portal for a quarterback. That settled that. They've got a guy and they've got a freshman they love, so they don't have to go do that now. And if he had played poorly, they nearly had to go to the transfer portal. If they didn't, they're going to be playing with a freshman, and I don't think they wanted to go that route. So that was a big plus. And the second was the defense. The defense in the last 2 weeks was totally different. And I thought it was the best 2 weeks they had of the whole season, not just after the South Carolina debacle, which was just about as bad as a defense can possibly play. I mean, it was just poor in all phases: coaching, playing, aggression, speed to the ball. Everything was poor. And to turn it around, and they gave up yards against Clemson, but that's the style now, Tony. You keep them out of the end zone, and they're going to get some yards if they're a wide open style of offense, and keep them out of the end zone. Get a turnover here, get a turnover there. Give it back to your defense, your offense, which is a fast-paced, fast-scoring, and that's why Tennessee all year, you don't go by they're different. You don't go by how many plays we had compared to the other team, because they score so dang fast and hit big plays. It really gets nullified. It doesn't mean that much. So, but I think they answered those two things. They're going in with some confidence on defense, and they got to add a lot of defensive players to it. But I think they can now, when there's confidence coming back, confidence in the coach, the coordinator, confidence in each other. And Joe Milton playing well won them the game, but it also settled what we have to bring in for the spring and for next year. They just throw that out. We're not bringing in a transfer guy.
And what a luxury. Again, credibility, just to have the opportunity to say, okay, this is what we have. It's settled. Look, the coaches are going to make the kid from Indianapolis feel like he's a part of this, Taven Jackson. That's why they're not naming a starter, obviously. And who knows? Maybe he goes out in the spring and knocks everybody's socks off. That could happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but it could happen. To your point, though, I was thinking about that game and what I thought the game was going to be prior to the game and what it ended up becoming. We saw nothing of the quarterback from Clemson that played against North Carolina. Didn't like the same guy. Because Tennessee basically decided, and I bet if Carolina had a chance to do it over, you can't adjust though, right? Carolina was prepared for DJ, and they knew, okay, with him out there, we're gonna bottle these guys up because we can bottle these guys up because he can't throw the ball downfield. So with the Klubnik kid, you can tell he's got some talent about him, but you know what? Tennessee decided we are going to take a game plan similar to what we did with Pittsburgh out of the same league to start the year, and we're just going to heat this quarterback up. We know in our back 4 or 5, depending on what formation we're using, we can't trust those guys. We'll live with pass interference penalties. We're not going to let you complete balls over top of us. You're going to grab people. And truthfully, they had that young kid so off his heels or on his heels that if they would have turned around a few times in the secondary, they probably would have had a couple picks to go with the night they have. But the decision just to throw caution to the wind and make him play faster than he wanted to play really paid dividends for Tennessee and turned that into a pretty easy win for the Vols. In retrospect, it was a pretty easy win, which is kind of surprising to say that.
Yeah, the thing I thought going in, I'm telling you, I've been there, and I remember my first college start.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a backup up at Michigan, and then go to North Carolina, and that was my first start. And I was a mess. And I'm a sophomore. You couldn't play. We had freshman teams, which were important. I mean, we played 5 SEC games, so you got experience in freshman ball, but it still didn't matter. My first start was against North Carolina. And that's what I thought. He came in as a backup in the North Carolina game.
Mm-hmm.
It's different when you're going out there as the starter for your first time. And I'm telling you, I saw it in him. He was nervous. And then when you add the pressure, and Clemson wasn't picking up the pressure, it wasn't that Tennessee was beating the pressure. There was free guys. So Clemson has not helped the kid a lick in the game because there's somebody coming at him about the time he catches the ball. And honestly, it was the difference in the game. In the second half, Clemson did a better job of picking it up, but the nervousness in him was there. And he was just a half a second late or a 2-yard overthrow. He just wasn't hardly there. I think he's going to be a really good player because I'm going to tell you, Tony, he is tougher than nails now. That kid is tougher than nails. He got hit the other night and he jumped back up.
Yeah.
And you'd see him on the sidelines, very competitive kid, very upset he wasn't playing better than he was. The nervousness really showed there right before the half when he takes off scrambling with no timeouts left. That's a young kid that's nervous that I promise you he's practiced that and practiced 1,000 times. But that's what Tennessee had as an advantage. Joe was starting for his second time, but he'd also started the year before 2 or 3 games. So I thought that was the difference in the game, and Tennessee handling the pressure. Joe did a better job of getting rid of the ball in the game. He didn't hold it as long.
Hey, Watson, if I can butt in for just a second, I was listening at the end of the first half to Clemson's radio broadcast, and their color announcer dusted Klubnik and said, this is why they haven't played him earlier. He said in practice, he does this constantly, which surprised me.
Wow.
Yeah.
First of all,
that's not fair, Watson, is it? Yeah.
First of all, they ought to fire that guy.
God.
I mean, you don't talk about your players that way. You ought to fire the guy. I mean, you're representing Clemson. You're not an ESPN broadcaster. You're representing Clemson.
Right.
I mean, that's awful if you ask me. And this is
just telling you what got said.
This is a true freshman. I'll take the bet with him. I'll bet you he turns into a great player, and that guy'll have to eat his words over many times.
Yeah, I mean, the kid's a freshman.
He's a first game start freshman.
And
true
you know
freshman, not redshirt freshman.
If you want to blame somebody on that, we talked about this on our post-game show. Blame coaches, because here's what happened. They come out of a timeout, or they came out of a penalty and got too much time. At some point, you got to call, especially if that color commentator is correct, George, and that is what occurred, and that occurred in practice. You got to call him over to the sidelines and say, son, anything on this play, but you cannot get tackled in the field of play. We're going to coach you through this. If anything, you got to put that on a coach. You can't.
Well, and you got to throw it. Yeah, and you got to throw it in the end zone or out of bounds.
Yeah, you can't get tackled here, son. And by the way, the game is stopped. So as a coach, you have a chance to call him over to me. Now, I could be a little being hard on Dabo and his staff, but, Dabo's too busy, worried about what he's going to say during his halftime conversation with the media.
Y'all are buddies, aren't you?
Oh, I love Dabo. I think I trust him.
I can tell.
The other thing, Tony, I imagine we're getting close, George. Stop me.
Keep going.
His fundamentals on the deep ball, daylight and dark. I told you he was coached well. I told you he was being coached well. They fixed him.
Yeah.
You watch him, he's much stiller. His eyes were focused.
Yeah.
You realize he missed one deep ball in the whole game, and that was a scramble running sideways that he just kind of threw one away over somebody's head. He didn't miss throw on the deep ball. Everybody said, why didn't they go deep more? Clemson was playing way off of them. Clemson was backed up. I think they went deep 5 or 6 times in the game. and hit 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
But Clemson was saying, you're not getting a big one. And Tennessee still did get quite a few big ones in the game.
It's impressive. And it went a lot easier than I thought it was going to go. And, one of the other adages that continue through this whole bowl season is you take the team, unless you're in a playoff, that wants to be there more. Tennessee was hungry.
Yeah, and that's all. That's any of those lower bowls.
All of them, with the exception of those playoff games. And for some extent, I think that's why TCU is kind of a dangerous opponent, guys. Somebody's telling you you're a 2-touchdown underdog. They've told you all year you're not good enough. Georgia looks kind of leaky. Their quarterback play wasn't exactly stellar. Stranger things have happened. I know people think I'm crazy, but stranger things have happened than that.
Listen, I'll guarantee you there's some people in Michigan saying they shouldn't be a 13.5-point dog.
No doubt.
That's going to be a fun title game. Tony, I want to ask you this last thing. In the next segment, we're going to put a graphic up of Tennessee's non-conference games after you're gone for 2023. They open against Virginia in Nashville. What is the school's desire? Is it to play at Nissan every couple of years? What is kind of the philosophy?
Boy, I don't know. It's really strange. I don't know. It's a great question. I think they did it for money. And we'll see what happens from there. But that's a great question, George. If you made me king, I would take these college games out of these professional stadiums and put them all back on college campuses, unless you're playing in a bowl game.
Yeah.
To me, just me, college football belongs on college campuses with college traditions, with a college vibe, with college feel. Professional games belong in professional stadiums. I wish they would stop this stuff. But, the sad thing is, and we didn't know this at the time, but Virginia's had that terrible tragedy, canceled their last 2 games.
Right.
The next time they take the field will be down in Nashville with Tennessee, and that's going to be a game that, in essence, is going to be a remembrance, going to be hard to escape that shadow, and very sad.
And I think I'm right. Is it Thursday night or Labor Day Saturday?
That game?
Yeah.
I believe.
September 2nd.
I believe that's Labor Day. Yeah. I don't think it's a Thursday.
September 2nd.
Labor Day Saturday.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
This has been awesome to have you on. And thanks for all the times I text you and go, can we change the
Hey, I'm here for you. You tell me. We do basketball stuff as well. I'm here for you anytime. You tell me.
I'm gonna get you and Griff on together.
There you go. I just had lunch with Griff.
Yes. I hope he paid.
I'm trying to smile anyway.
Did he pay? That's what I thought.
Have a great day, guys.
Behave. Talk to
Thank you.
you soon.
See you, Tony.